Continuing in basic panel, below the light sliders, we have some other sliders: texture, clarity, dehaze, vibrance, and saturation. So I want to be focused on these two, on vibrance and saturation, because they can be very useful when it comes to adjusting lights, but of course we need to understand the differences between them. So to do this, what I'm going to do, maybe first make the image a little bit bigger. I'm going to increase the saturation slider maximum to 100. And what you can notice, looking at the background, comparing to the skin, you can see that effect of the saturation wasn't really strong on the background, on the cold color, but it was very strong when it comes to the yellow colors, oranges. So in fact, the saturation slider mainly affects the yellow, then second, oranges, greens, and it affects least the cold color like the blue. Also, what's important to notice, it does change the hue values a little bit. As you can see, and the skin tones doesn't really look like they have the same color as they had before. So then going down to opposite direction, as you can see, we would just desaturate image to the maximum, but the effect is not so profound as in the case of increasing the saturation. Going back to 0, let's try the vibrance slider. When we increase the vibrance slider, first thing we can notice that effect of the saturation is stronger on the blue color than in the previous case. And also, looking at the skin, we can see the effect on the skin is less than in the previous case. So the fact about the vibrance is that it's pretty much affecting the saturation of the colors equally, but when it comes to skin tones, it doesn't have such a strong effect. So the fact about saturation is it does preserve skin tones in the very good way. And the skin tones will be, of course, orange color, red colors next, and yellow colors, with the stronger effect, of course, on the oranges. So the vibrance is a good option if we want to work on the saturation of the image, but also want to preserve the natural tones and saturation of the skin. So now, going down, you can see how it will work in the opposite way. We lost saturation from most of the other areas, but the saturation around the areas where we had most of the orange color and saturation, as you can see, stayed. What I'm going to do for this image, I want to increase the vibrance to around value 30. It will give me this nice blue color, but at the same time will not dominate over the image. And also we have these 3 other sliders. They won't be useful at this stage, but I do want to show you how to use them and how they work. So starting with the texture, I'm going to move it to the right. And what you can see when I increase the texture, it does enhance the texture of the skin, but we need to understand which parts of the texture it affects. The texture will only affect these very small details on the image. So what you can notice, we had a lot of this very tiny, fine hair on the face, but right now all of them got increased. When we look at the bigger sized pictures, for example, even at the hair here, they do not seem to be affected that much. So the texture slider will mainly be affecting these very fine details. So when we have the skin, we want to increase the skin texture, and that will be the perfect tool. And of course, this is not the moment to do it because that would make the retouching a little bit difficult. So when it comes to the texture, this is very much the last step we would be doing. And going opposite, we will exactly work opposite way. So we will get these very small details and we decrease the sharpness around this area. And as you can see, this image will be very de-sharpened, very unpleasant effect, we could even say. So going back to 0, now I'm going compare to clarity. Let's increase the clarity to 100. And as you can see, from one side it's similar but also very different. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit to show you the bigger picture. What happened here, we increased the contrast but not all over the image, but only around the mid-tones. That's why we got this weird contrasty effect. And it does also sharpen the image, but not these very small and fine details, but it does sharpen strongly the edges. So looking around the hair here, you can see we are close to getting this weird halo effect. So the effect on texture is not the same. It doesn't take these small single pixels, but it grabs the bigger areas around the midtones and enhance them and build up the sharpening around them. And opposite, of course, and the effect will get in opposite way. So we won't have the contrast around the midtones, as well as we won't have so many details around the edges here. And going back to 0, the last one will be dehaze, and the use of dehaze is probably on different type of images. When we have some landscape hazy images and we want to increase the visibility, we can manipulate with haze. It does increase the contrast and it does increase the saturation here, but thanks to that we can decrease the haze if such appear on the image. So the haze is not the slider we would use even on this image at the start or at the end of the work as well. That wouldn't be very useful. And also going opposite, as you can see, we decrease the contrast, we decrease the saturation of the image and make the image more hazy. So that's it briefly about these sliders. You know why they are not so useful at the start of retouching, at the start of the raw conversion, but why vibrance and saturation could help you achieve the certain results.